to the Breakthrough Club. My name is Seher Gattas, founder and CEO of Flawless Unbound. Each week, we bring a unique perspective by inviting a special guest, a business, sales, or a marketing leader who are actually truly rising above the noise. Today, I want to introduce a very special guest, Colin Bell, founder and CEO of RecycleSmart. Colin, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Seher. Glad to be here virtually.
Absolutely, and hopefully that will change very soon. So, Colin, please give the audience a little bit of a background about you as a person, your educational background, previous experience before RecycleSmart.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in the province of PEI, which is a tiny little province on the East Coast, and grew up there. And then I moved out to the west, spent some time in Alberta, and then finally British Columbia. So I always say that I just went from one ocean to the next. So I stopped here when I hit the other ocean. Before RecycleSmart, my background was mostly in communications. So I did a broadcasting diploma and then a communications degree at Royal Roads University of Victoria. And most of my experience was in the field of amateur sport. So I spent a lot of time in the sport of biathlon as an athlete, a coach, and then as more of an event manager. So my last stint there was assistant sport manager for the sport of biathlon at Bannock for the Vancouver 2010 Olympic Games. And then since then, I've been doing RecycleSmart full time. So from shooting, biathlon's kind of a strange sport. It's actually skiing and shooting, and from there to recycling. So a bit of a career switch, but I've really enjoyed it.
Wow! So nationally through Canada, and then now being one of the Canada's waste wizard, that's an interesting shift. Tell us more about RecycleSmart.
For sure. So RecycleSmart was founded in 2008, and we now operate coast to coast. So we're in every province and territory. And our value proposition is for companies that have multiple locations spread out across the country. They want one company to manage waste and recycling across all of their locations. And so that's where we come in. We provide a one-stop shop, one invoice, one point of contact, one set of reporting. And we bundle that up with some cool IoT technology so that they have data on what they're recycling, how their recycling plan is progressing. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it usually saves them, 10, 15% because they're just being more efficient.
That's amazing. And if I understand correctly, so you guys apply a lot of IoT, maybe back-end data analytics to companies like commercial, residential, hospitality, retail. Is that kind of the value?
So we stick in the commercial side of the business. We don't do anything with residential. So curbside pickup houses and things like that isn't our bread and butter. Our primary sectors are commercial property management. So that'd be offices, shopping centers, any commercial building. And then hotels and restaurants, and then national retailers, as well as a little bit of distribution and manufacturing. So that's the three main sectors that we take part in. And yeah, with technology wise, we're deploying sensors into containers that feed data back into our system and tell us how full our customers' containers are when they were last picked up. And we're using some machine learning and AI on the back end to help make their system more efficient at the end of the day.
Beautiful. So now I want to take you back to the memory lane, maybe 12 years ago. How did the shift started? Like, why RecycleSmart? What happened to make you kind of bootstrap this organization?
Yeah, so I founded RecycleSmart with my wife, Jacqueline McFadden, who is our Chief Administrative Officer. And both of us had spent a lot of time in areas of the world that were seeing climate change. So as a ski racer, I was starting to see snow was getting harder and harder to come by. Winters were getting more erratic. Some winters we had lots of snow, other winters it rained and the grass was green. So I was definitely seeing, the effects of climate change. And she was spending her time as an expedition leader in the Arctic and Antarctic regions. So she was definitely seeing huge changes there from, she was there for 7 years and saw massive changes in ice and things like that. So both of us wanted to work in a business that really contributed positively to the environment, and RecycleSmart came about as a part of both of our experience with working for businesses that were trying to set up recycling programs. My experience on the event side, she was working in the hotel industry, and we both found it really challenging to set up a recycling program from the business perspective, and we thought there's got to be a better way to do this. So that's really the genesis of the business, was helping businesses figure out recycling.
Perfect. Thanks, Colin. So now take us through your organization from a high level perspective, pre-COVID. Like how big is your team, your sales team and your operation team?
Yeah, so the total team size is about 50 employees coast to coast. In the sales side, we have 5 dedicated what we call hunters. They're new business development reps, and then a national sales manager. And then the rest of the team is accountants, account managers, and then technology and support. So the good thing for us pre-COVID was we were always about 2/3 of the company was remote to begin with because they're spread out. So that was a real boon for us because we already had, I don't want to say we'd figured out working from home, but we already had a lot of team members that were working from home, fully cloud-based computer system. We were already using tools like Zoom and Teams to do meetings. So compared to a lot of organization, I think it was an easier jump for us than say if you're on legacy systems and everyone went to the office every day.
Totally. So I think it was just maybe it's sad to say that, but let's say COVID was just an accelerator maybe to have really everybody working from home and kind of get things going.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting now because I think we're like a lot of other companies having that discussion about, when we go back, who goes back, do we need all this office space? I think it's going to be an interesting conversation with some commercial landlords in the next couple of years. Maybe not right away, but when people go to renew leases, maybe they realize, hey, we don't need all this space. So I think that's one thing. I mean, we've always been pretty open and flexible on people, working from home on a Friday or that kind of thing. For us, I think what we are suffering from a little bit is that face-to-face collaboration with our teammates. We also onboarded our first outside CEO, Rob Duthie, who joined the organization on April 1st. And so he actually joined remotely. So no one's met him. He's been on the job for a month. And other than the executive team that interviewed him, no one else has actually ever met him in person because, he hasn't been able to do that. So that's been interesting. There's pros and cons of everything. And I think the pros of onboarding a CEO remotely is nobody can corner the CEO after hours and, promote their pet projects. Everybody gets the same access, right? It doesn't matter who you are in the company. You basically have the same access to the CEO. So that's been good. The con is, I think, it's tough when you're a new person, from his perspective coming in. You can't read body language. You don't pick up on, maybe those kind of things that we don't really, use in our communication. Like we call it the smell effect, right? You can't really get any of that stuff when you're remote.
That's absolutely true, right? Because then, especially at the new CEO, like you're joining the management team, you want to make sure that utilizing the team properly and understanding the skill set that you'll be dealing with. I also heard that a lot of new CEOs joining an organization, usually the first 90 days, sometimes maybe they're on an observation and note-taking zone first before they start applying their playbooks. So definitely it's an interesting perspective, and welcome to adding a leader to the organization. That's amazing. So Colin, can I ask you now to speak more in depth into the culture of RecycleSmart? Describe the culture of RecycleSmart to us.
Yeah, so the culture of RecycleSmart, I would say, for people that have been joining RecycleSmart from outside, I would say they see it as a fairly youthful organization. A lot of our employees are under the age of 35, and if you come to the head office in Richmond, it's kind of got that tech company vibe. We've got the free snacks and the foosball table and the beer on Fridays and
the bean bags
the music in the office, and a couple of dogs. So I think overall, we're pretty fun and playful, and I think that the overall culture of RecycleSmart is very collaborative. We're operating in an industry that is pretty old school. The customer service is not the best, and not to blame any of our vendors. It's just it's the way it's always been done. So we really try to bring a little bit of a 2.0 attitude and say, hey, we can do this better. We can have better customer service, more proactive services that we provide, and try to make things better for the customers at the end of the day. So I think that's really one of the ethos of the company is collaboration. Let's make it better. And also, have fun and make some mistakes. We're trying new things. Some of them work, some of them don't. I've been, definitely on the end of some great ideas that I came up with that didn't really take off. So we encourage people to innovate, but also know that, with innovation comes failure, and that's okay.
It's part of the journey, I guess. And
it is.
and it's better to disrupt yourself first than having somebody else disrupt you, or conditions disrupt you, kind of, in a way, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, COVID's been a good example of, disruption of your business model. Like we talked about earlier, for us, it wasn't that disruptive from a day-to-day operations. We were still able to answer the phones and send out invoices and serve our customers. It was a little bit disruptive, I think, for a company that has really, for the past 10 years, been on this torrent, growth every year. Like you mentioned, we've been one of the fastest growing companies in Canada over the last couple of years. So, to see top line revenue drop for a lot of people was kind of like, ooh, this has never happened before. To hear things like layoffs or, we might not be doing X, Y, Z, that just hasn't been part of the culture in RecycleSmart, right? We've been pedal to the metal, bigger, better every year. So that's taken some adjustment. I think we've been lucky. We haven't had to lay anyone off. We've been maintaining, the team that we have. It has forced us definitely to make some decisions on terms of, what's a priority. A lot of that also just comes from the unknown. Like, this could be over in 3 months. It could be a year. And there's a big difference, right? 3 months to a year. 3 months, we're probably okay. If this continues until the end of the year, obviously that's going to be a different picture altogether.
Totally. I totally understand that. So Colin, can you take us now into your sales team, right? So you mentioned you have 5 hunters, if I understand correctly.
Yep.
And kind of you're managing that team for the time being. And I know you hired already a new CEO and things like that. So take us from a very high level perspective, the sales and the marketing process, let's say pre-COVID, how did it look like?
Yeah, so I'm lucky that we have, a really strong sales leader, our Chief Commercial Officer, Eric Harp, who manages the day-to-day with the hunting team. So for them, I think the biggest change has been, we were really a go out and meet with people in person organization in the past. That's how we did sales. We did, lots of phone calls, but most of the stuff got done face-to-face, at least at some part in the sales process. Part of that comes to the fact that, we're selling to companies that often have physical, premises. So they have a shopping mall or they have a hotel. And sometimes it's nice to go and see, the challenges they're having face to face, show us the problems you're having with your recycling program. And the other thing I think is just what we're selling is a little bit, not weird, but a lot of times it's the first time our prospects have heard of this. They've always used a garbage company that had trucks and bins, and they're like, you're not a garbage company. So sometimes going out in person really helps to communicate that value proposition. Again, because a lot of communication with humans is, body language and things like that. So I think they've, activity-wise with sales, they've done a really good job of keeping the meetings up. I think, some of them have said, selling remotely has its pluses, but one of the things is it just seems to slow the sales cycle down, partly because it's harder to get everyone in a room and kind of get collaboration going, even if they're all on Zoom calls, because it's just not 100% the same. So I think that's the big thing with them is they're like, this now takes 5 or 6 meetings to get to the same stage we used to be able to, if we got everyone in the boardroom and said, this is what we do, are you guys interested? And the decision makers would say, yeah, let's do it. Now they're like, well, I got to talk to Bob and he's not on this call, so let's set up another call.
Yeah. And
that just kind of makes things longer and longer.
Absolutely. And then, so let's say now COVID hopefully is out of the door. Hopefully.
Yeah.
What would you see kind of post-COVID? What would life look like post-COVID in a sales and marketing environment for RecycleSmart?
Well, I think it's going to push us on the sales development kind of representative route faster than we've always kind of dabbled in the SDR. So having that kind of inside sales lead gen side, I think it's going to push us in that direction faster because we now realize that we can probably do a lot of initial meetings by Zoom, a 30-minute Zoom, kind of get the feel for the client or the prospect. Are they interested? Are they a good fit for what we offer? And then we'll go out and do the face-to-face because we know that is effective. But I think we spent a lot of time in the past, driving for 2 hours to go to a meeting that, within 10 minutes of walking in the door, we're like, this is a waste of everyone's time. So it'll push us to do more of those, the 30-minute Zoom call is your first touch point. And then if it looks like it has legs, then you can continue on. Definitely the webinars have been more successful than we thought. I think right now, probably because a lot of people are sitting around at home, and starting to, look for things to do. But definitely webinars have had good uptake, and we've just started doing those with the help of Flawless, and those have been good. And we're rolling out our first podcast on Friday. So
congratulations.
For us, I think, COVID's kind of give us a chance to kind of take our breath and get some of the stuff on our to-do list that we've been, procrastinating just because we've been so busy. So, but post-COVID, yeah, I think a lot less, probably less in-person meetings, but more focused in-person meetings, which would be, I think at the end of the day, probably a good thing. Less driving around for no reason and wasting time.
So hopefully quality, not quantity. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Hopefully, but
yeah, I think we're going to try to use tech at the top part of the funnel a little bit more instead of using that kind of, we would meet with anyone in the past in person. In reality, probably some of those didn't have to be in person. So.
And I'm glad, Colin, you brought this up. Can you walk us through your tech stack when it comes to sales and marketing? What software, what platforms are you guys using inside of RecycleSmart right now?
Yeah, so we're in kind of that awkward phase as a company where we have a lot of systems that we've implemented as we grew over the years. So, we're using Pipeline Deals CRM, which is a web-based CRM. We've recently implemented HubSpot with the help of Flawless, and HubSpot's become our go-to for social media, for email, and for tracking of the analytics. So it's good because it's got us out of before we were in MailChimp, Google Analytics, and then we were using another social media tool to cross post on platforms. So the challenge for us now is we're just going into a bit of an ERP review of our whole enterprise software system. And so what we want to do is to get further out of those silos and get the CRMs talking to the sales and customer CRMs. So we use also Microsoft Dynamics for when we do like customer side case and ticket management. So really, I think if I was to do it again, like every entrepreneur looks back, would be, when you hit around the 10 million mark is to start to try to de-silo some of your systems. When you're small, like whatever, right? Find something cheap and easy that works and just get out there and make it happen. But if you get too big, some of those silos really start to cause some pain. And we're probably a little past where we should have de-siloed some stuff, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm hearing the same feedback from a lot of founders right now in kind of in the same size as RecycleSmart, which is a national organization. You touched the $10 million where they're going into a consolidation and hopefully an integration of systems where the leadership team and the management team can actually see as a single dashboard of reporting, or let's say a semi-singular view of the organization, so that you guys can take a faster way of taking decisions and pivoting to different directions. Do you guys feel you're in kind of that zone right now?
Yeah, I think like I would say, pick an ecosystem, realize that ecosystem is not going to do everything you want, but there's a lot of advantages. Like if you go 100% into the Microsoft ecosystem or 100% into Google, then, everything talks to each other. The integration is tight. You don't have to manage 100 licenses. That being said, there's often features that people really like. So you end up with this kind of like, well, I'm not leaving Salesforce because I really like this feature. So, I mean, that's kind of our decision on the CRM side right now is, do we go into HubSpot for everything? Do we go into Microsoft or, which direction do we go? So we're probably 6 to 8 months out from making that decision. But yeah, really the goal is to get everything into one system so that we can look and say, oh, this is a customer in these five provinces and we're prospecting in these 3 provinces. And, we can see the Weber relationships. So it sounds really basic, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the information, you end up with embarrassing things like, new reps call existing customers and say, hey, have you thought of RecycleSmart? And they say, yeah, we're a customer. And the rep says, worst case advantage. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of, we are in this era right now where technology is available, but the problem is that we have too much of them. So integration and consolidation is a big factor. Colin, I want to just ask you one final question, which is when you're kind of using those kind of different technology, which one would you add more value to? Is it the ease of integration or is it the ease of use to your, let's say your sales rep and your VP of sales, Eric and team?
I think it's probably ease of use. I mean, on the integration side, we have a CIO that can can work with our team in terms of integration. And, if the integration requires custom coding or connectors and things like that, like they can usually get it done. So it's more of the ease of use, where you want to be able to, quite quickly get people up to speed and get them figuring out what to do and how to use the system. And I mean, that's kind of one of the knocks on, some of the big platforms like Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics. Super powerful tools, but if you go in as a newbie, I mean, you could just get lost in everything that's going on. So, from what I've seen of HubSpot so far, it's much more intuitive on the front end. You still do need someone that knows how to run the back end on HubSpot, or I shouldn't say that. You'll get more value out of it if you have someone that knows how to run the back end of HubSpot. But from the front end, it's fairly intuitive. It all comes down to your users too. Like, are they power users, or is your average rep, not really going to be in the CRM that much type thing? So, So for us, I mean, on the customer service side, it's a tougher one because it's fully integrated with Microsoft Nav, which is our accounting software. And there's a lot of back and forth in terms of work orders and, all the SKUs that we sell and things like that. So yeah, as you know, software integration,
it's a different story completely. I get it.
It can be fun for sure. Yeah.
I'm glad at least you have a CIO, which is at least not on your plate, which is a good thing in a way.
It's good. I was making a terrible mess of things. When people look back and say, why do we have all these systems? And then they look at me in the boardroom and I say, don't look at me, but really it is my fault. That's why we have all the systems. So yeah, it's one of those things where you're always looking for the next best thing. The problem is 10 years down the road, you can end up with a lot of next best things that maybe don't all talk to each other.
Absolutely. Colin, final thing is just for the audience today, final thought or final takeaway advice to business leaders, sales and marketing leaders, let's say post-COVID and where the industry is going. Just a couple of maybe key advices from your perspective.
I think that, you need to realize that this will end eventually. And if you're in a business like ours, the sales cycle is long. And, if you take your foot off the gas completely because you decide that COVID is shutting your business down, just really keep in mind that whatever that sales cycle is that you've been experiencing in the past is probably going to get even longer. So, kind of do that math and say, if I had a 6-month sales cycle before, it's probably going to be more like, 8, 9, 10. So, there is some benefits of taking your foot off the gas. You can save some money and maybe preserve the life of your business, but just keep in mind, it could really affect your long-term growth. And it will pass eventually. So just keep that in mind, is if you take your foot off now, that might mean another 3, 4, 5 years before you hit that goal that you have, pinned to your dartboard or your notice board in your office. So, make those decisions with your eyes open.
Absolutely. Colin Bell, founder of RecycleSmart, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us some of the advice and lesson learned. Thank you again for your time.
Thanks, here.